I'm Sonya Morton Firth and you're tuned in to the Sonya Morton Firth Show. Today I'm live in deepest Somerset with my guest Nick Goldsmith. Nick is a Royal Marines Commando Veteran. After 11 years in service, including 4 brutal tours of Afghanistan, he was medically discharged, suffering with complex Ptsd. His love of the outdoors and woodland environment led him to start Hidden Bushcraft Valley, where he built upon a woodland area, creating a self-made retreat. This interview gives some great insights into how a veteran transitions into civilian life, building on a dream and supporting others through his recovery. Nick, thank you so much. I was going to say thank you so much for being a guest on my show, but I'm actually a guest here in your beautiful woodlands here in Hidden Bushcraft Valley. Nick, please tell me more about this. Tell me, how did this all start? This is absolutely, and just for everybody that's listening, it's probably one of the hottest days of the year. We've got a beautiful roaring campfire, and we're sat under a parachute in the middle of the most amazing woodlands.
We are pretty lucky, actually.
We're absolutely blessed.
Now that you've just given it such a good intro. Yeah, we are. I mean, the parachute plays a key, important role. It acts as obviously a sunshade and a shade from the elements, but it also gives our little kind of, as you've just described, our campfire area, a bit of a ceiling and a bit of a kind of it is essentially an outdoor classroom, and it's also where a lot of our therapeutic courses take place. It's that central point. It gives it that main camp feel, but without being permanent in any way. You know, it's a very light touch on the land. It's just, at the end of the day, it's a big silk canopy, isn't it? So
it's amazing. It creates a great setting. Where did you get the idea for this, to create this
I don't
retreat?
think there was an idea. That's a really good question. There was an idea initially at some point in the process, but to get to that idea, there had to be a whole bunch of other stuff that happened organically first, to then allow myself to have that idea, to then actually go off on a specific mission to create this space.
But you must have always loved living outdoors, being in the outdoors.
Always. I can remember being, I don't know how young, 5, 6, 7, 8, whether I was out traipsing across the fields with a fishing rod to go fishing on a local farm. We're a bit older, shooting rabbits with an air rifle, and then being shown by my granddad how to skin it and gut it, and being forced to eat the rabbit instead of
rabbit
spaghetti.
Pie?
Well, everyone else had spaghetti bolognese, and I had to eat the rabbit as my lesson for taking the life of an animal. I had to then learn, which is a fair lesson to learn. So my French grandfather made me get down to the garage and do the business and remove the jacket and gut it, and it was a bit. But you then have a lot more respect for how that you see that end state from start to finish. So the outdoors for me was always a constant learning playground. It was I've always said frustration and failure are your 2 biggest teachers. Okay, so whether you're falling out of trees or whether you're burning yourself or coming back with no eyebrows from a campfire or whatever it is, you have to go through those processes to truly get good at what it is you do. As long as you've got that burning passion, you'll keep going back at it, no matter how many times you fall off the horse.
I love it. So basically what you're saying, this was a burning passion. There was a dream there that you've actually made happen.
And I think as I grew that yearn for the outdoors, so I grew up in East Sussex, and I played lots of rugby, and I had, I didn't go to private school or anything like that, but I worked hard, and probably not so much at school, but on the rugby pitch. And I thought rugby was going to be initially that was going to be the career. And I spent all my weekends, if I wasn't playing rugby, I'd be down the woods. That then turned into, well, why don't I just put the physicality and the loving the outdoors together, and I'll join the Royal Marines. Kind of.
Was it in your family? Was anyone in your family that served? My
grandfather was a tail gunner in a Wellington and then in a Lancaster, and finished up as a WO1 in the RAF during World War II.
We're sat here. Who would normally be sat around this campfire?
to say everyone and anyone, if I gave you a snapshot pre-COVID.
Yes.
Pre-COVID.
This is all before this, yes.
So we're talking pre-COVID
Correct.
now. A Monday morning would look like, down here you would have toddlers, mums and dads. This would be toddler group. And from the cabin, you'd have all the teas and coffees, biscuits, all set up, rusks, everything. And kids would be playing all over the slopes and in different parts of the woodland. They'd be everywhere for a couple of hours on a Monday morning. And then Monday afternoon would be pretty much my equivalent of a weekend. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the kindergarten is in full swing. So again, you've got 3 to 5 year olds,
Great for kids.
2 qualified teachers, myself and Louise on site,
Yeah.
and that's all happening. Fridays would be generally either a corporate day for a corporate group coming down, maybe doing the whole kind of fire making, archery, pulling water out the river, purifying it, challenges, lots of kind of outdoor wilderness living skill stuff, but very subtly stitched together as team building. So I'm bringing them together and they have a challenge at the end and all that kind of stuff. Saturday, Sundays could be veteran volunteers coming down to help me. I could be running a Woodland Warrior program.
Tell me about the Woodland Warrior program, because this is something that's sort of quite recent, right?
Yeah, in terms of its official CIC status, but it's something we just did for as long as I was in the recovery centre. It was always a thing, I'd always have a mate who'd want to come down the woods with me and spend the day doing something. And it's not like I didn't have enough jobs to do, whether I'm just cutting and digging stumps or building a new table or making a new set of stairs or something, there's always a job. So
they'd come and help you, basically?
So they'd just come and help us, and we'd have the kettle on, we'd cook lunch over the fire.
Great.
It's just a day out, but I'm getting that help physically in the lab, but it's also you're mentally bouncing off each other, it's kind of it's just the best environment to be in, quite frankly.
And at what point, I guess, did you realise that it actually was helping the veterans with probably what they'd been through and what they'd seen serving?
I would say only when people started verbalising it. I mean, I can pick up on auto cues and I can read people, and that's my job, is to do that stuff around the campfire and help steer people. But until somebody actually sat me down and went, mate, you realise this has saved my life. And I was like, what?
This has saved my life.
Yeah, and for that person to then say, I was really thinking of, that was it. What do you say to that? I was just blown away, really. Just, oh, right, okay.
Completely.
And that process has now played out many times. And then, but it's not just from coming here, it's then for me having the tool set to then be able to say to them, look, I've been where you've been, and did you know these guys can help and these guys can help, and this is what I did. This isn't necessarily what's going to work for you, and it's not an easy journey, but you can do this. And if you, maybe it's a combination of my persistence, and maybe it's a combination of this environment, but whatever it is, they go away and they act on it.
Well, it's definitely both. It's got a magical feel to it, but also you're in a place that feels, I guess, safe.
It's safe.
Safe would be a good word. And like you said, the campfire surroundings must open people up.
It's been described as a womb-like.
Really, yeah,
it's like
I
a
can
green
feel it.
It's like a little green tunnel in here. Yeah, so you're not actually, if you really think about it, a million miles off of society and the beaten track. But everywhere you look right now, it's just a wall of green, and it's about helping them to see within that wall of green all of the things that we would have known, or ancestors would have known for sure. It's not just a green bush. It's, that's medicine, food, poison, avoid. That's, and you can you start to look at I'd describe it like the Matrix.
And you offer everything from cooking, as I understand it.
Everything.
Around the campfire, making things, building things.
Micro expeditions.
Wow.
Yeah, so get CEOs who want to get away from it. So not just the corporate team building, sending a team, but actually the CEO themselves might say, look, I need a weekend away. I need a couple of days away from everything just to recalibrate, or we've got some big changes happening in our business. Getting that perspective, getting that time away from having your business under your own nose to just...
Oh, it's a great way to sort of
it's
let go and actually recharge the batteries, but also mentally recharge.
Completely.
Probably go back into a
better
better
state. They'll start here, they'll do a bit of sort of training with me, and then it'll be rucksacks on, and I'll take them on a jaunt all the way around the valley, all the kind of best best places to go, the falling waterfalls, the lake, the ancient stone circles, the Iron Age hill fort up on the 25-mile view. You can see to Wales.
Yeah, it's
from the top
amazing.
there.
When we walk down here, I mean, the countryside is breathtaking.
It really is.
But now you're branching out a little bit further, aren't you?
We are.
Now that
We are.
COVID, now we're just coming out the other side. How's that going to change the Woodland Warrior program?
Really good question. It's that organic progression.
Yes.
So obviously providing stuff for veterans who are notoriously can be a difficult group to work with, can be quite closed, stigma, there's a lot of stigma that used to be there that is breaking, is steadily breaking up but still exists.
Do you take all veterans? Because presumably there's a lot of veterans that have lost limbs.
Yeah.
And I know that's something we discussed.
We're working very hard. So the field, I've made a big fuss about the field in my social media, has been an ongoing project since about February last year when we took it on. It is now table flat once it's just been cut. So the day before I'd be running a course for those guys now. We've had Blesma down and Help Heroes, and they've come and had a look round, etc.
Yeah.
I would have the grass cut the day before, so it said it's optimal shortness.
Yeah.
And the field has been, scarified and raked and moved around, and it's brilliant. It is as flat as it's going to get. And you've got that river frontage to it. And I've actually built a second camp like this in the field deliberately for those guys. So wheelchair-bound veterans will now have access to bushcraft and all the rest of it in the same way that everybody else does up here on the slope, up on the camp. To go a step further, thinking about below knee amputee and above knee amputee kind of veterans, we're trying to implement changes to the main camp here to make that more friendly. I can't change the lay of the land. I can move tons of earth and I can work like a Trojan, but at the end of the day,
God, which would make me
exactly. There are limitations to what I can do, but equally, it's not about making it completely easy, because this is about a challenge for them and about them realising what they can do again.
And that must be a really important point. And I was going to ask you about this. How did it feel from you coming out the military? And I'd like to talk more about that in a bit. How did it feel transitioning into civilian life, having almost had an identity?
Crisis.
I mean, how did it really affect you?
I mean, it affected me in so much as because physically I look like I'm in A1 condition. It's very hard, and that kind of feeds into the way that things work up here. Makes it worse almost. But equally, having friends who have lost arms and legs and things, everybody struggles. Everybody struggles with the imposter syndrome. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you're a professional sports athlete, whether you're a professional elite soldier, whether you're a special force, whatever. Everybody
absolutely
gets the imposter syndrome. Yeah. People come on the course, having signed up to be on the course, and start to struggle with the whole, somebody else has just told their story on the campfire, and in their head they're going, oh God, I've never been through anything like that. That's nowhere near as bad as my story. I'm now not going to share anything. So one of the first things I do is I bring that up as part of the course. I will lead to start with, and then slowly just wind back. And they, hopefully, if I'm doing my job, they don't notice I'm winding back, and then they're coming to the fore. That's how that works. So it's,
were you drawing on your experiences as well? I mean,
almost certainly every single course, I have to draw my own experience, because it would be wrong for me to tell someone else's story in order to try and help someone, because that's not it doesn't come out, it's weird. I describe it as that conversation that goes on between two people that's happening without the actual words. It's got to come from within you to be able to empower someone to take control of their own life or to make a decision or whatever it is. The wording is key, but not as key as the genuine empathy and the genuine passion that you're installing into someone to help lift them up and help them go on to achieve their goals or whatever it is that they want to do, or make that change. I always say there's no change without change.
So actually on that point, talking about your experiences, can I take you back to your military days?
Yeah.
You did 4 tours of Afghanistan.
I did, yeah.
At what point were you, or did you I guess what was the biggest challenge and darkest moment for you before you were diagnosed with PTSD?
A mixture of two things, and I'd say first and last, for this reason. First tour, I definitely knew after getting injured and being sent back to the UK and then starting to do the coffin bearer duties that something had changed in me.
The coffin bearing duties, tell me about that.
So essentially, and almost inevitably, in any conflict, not everyone's going to come home.
Yeah.
And having been injured, I got sent back to the UK, had a knee operation, and by miracle, I don't know how, I hadn't been hit with anything. People have been hit left and right of me, but I hadn't been hit with anything. But in getting into cover, I jumped across an irrigation ditch, creamed in with all this kit on in 50-degree heat and all the rest of it, and just wrecked my knee. And it's still a problem now, but I wrecked my knee and I severed my posterior cruciate ligament. I put a big contusion over the top of my shin bone, and I'd split the cartilage, and I just basically got away with that without breaking my leg. I'd kind of done loads of soft tissue damage and stuff inside the knee, and it just meant I couldn't soldier for the rest of the tour. Absolutely beside myself that I had to leave the lads to continue the tour, and for me, that was that. I then had to go back to the UK, back to a home unit, which was, you know, there's only a handful of guys left behind basically. There's either the brand new guys who've just finished training, who have come to the unit, who are keen and want to get out there and get amongst it, and then there are guys who are broken who are coming back. And then there are those who come back who never come back. And so it generally falls to at the time, the base company, the chaps who are left behind there, to organise, run, facilitate and oversee the funerals. So you're looking for coffin bearers, you're looking for lads in uniform to carry the coffins. For me, the power of hindsight, it's a difficult one because, and I've said this a few times, anybody who asks you, who wants to carry the coffin, take one step forward, or what, you're going to throw yourself in for it every single time, because that's, with the survivor's guilt thing, that should be you in your mind at the time, and they've got wives and kids and all the rest of it, and I was a single young man, or relatively single young man at the time. In my head, I'd completely broken free of any relationships that I had going at the time. I was in a bad way, and by comparison to someone who had a house and a wife and kids and all the rest of it, it just wasn't the same. I found that extremely hard.
Almost devaluing your own life.
Oh, completely didn't. I did not care for myself at all. Okay. And so you go and you carry the coffin, but it's they arrive at Lynham, and you do the first process, which is carrying the coffin off, and it's very hard. And you put the body into the hearse, and it's right in front of the family. It's kind of the first time it really hits home for them. And it's an extremely stressful time, and then you do a couple of practice runs with a practice coffin in between that, and then to make sure that everything is absolutely military precision. All your movements, and it's quite heavy, and it's a varnished box, and you've got white gloves on, and you don't want to slip or, and all the words of command, to make sure that everything happens as it should do to give that person the very best respectful send-off that you possibly could. So we practice and practice and practice, and then you'd have the day of the race, the funeral, and you'd see all the family again, and all these little nuances and things would happen that would just stay with you as much as the stuff that happened on the ground did or does. So I remember being tapped on the shoulder and spun round by some poor lady who thought I looked like one of the lads who was in the box for a split second.
Yes.
Yeah. And that really stayed with me. Just these little things that another person told me, it's okay because your career now, their son's career now, you continue the career, and it was meant as a lovely thing, but it
hit
by tour number, operational deployment number 6, and the wheels were falling off. I didn't want to give up or hang it up because I couldn't, because I'd be letting that person down. See how these things are all connected?
Yeah, completely.
And it is very, very hard. So fast forward to Afghan tour number 4, operational deployment number 6. I'm then completely fried, burnt out, done, don't know it, overtraining, living on black coffee, just absolute monster. I could run forever, I could climb a rope forever, I could punch bag forever, I could lift weights, I could because I didn't care. I was doing it all completely free of my own welfare. I did not care.
You didn't care whether you lived or died.
No, you get into a very nasty mindset. You know, in 7 months with no R&R, that last tour was just the straw that broke the camel's back.
And what was that last moment that did break?
We had, well, there was a series of things that started happening that had been happening for a long time. There was kind of what you call a dissociative episode. So I'd been drinking between the tours and stuff, and losing periods of time and acting like a complete lunatic, and then not knowing what would happen the next day, completely just becoming someone else. So drink's not my friend. And you just had to, like, because it's that raw stuff that's stored in your limbic system that's coming out to the fore once you're obviously full of toxicity. That's what happens. Brain switches off, other brain kicks in, I'll save us. And of course, whatever's in that chimp, in that raw box, it's not good.
No, you're going back to your chimp brain, as you say.
And that data is only uploaded into that chimp brain during times of fight or flight. Now, if you've got loads of things that have happened and none of it's really been talked about, sorted, you weren't sleeping correctly at the time, it's all just building and building and building in this big box of bothered that you're carrying around it.
And suddenly it's coming up, you've had a few drinks,
and it's
one too many.
And then it starts to spill over into your conscious world. Yeah. And that's when you start hearing and seeing things that aren't there. And that paranoia just gets to a point. And this is where we start to see people really just falling off the scale. Yeah. So it can be worked on and it can be improved on. I'm not going to say it's a magic fix. I'm not going to say that coming in the woods gives you a magic wand. But you've got to find that thing that you truly love to do, and you've got to get hold of it and go with it.
Would you say that was the main thing that got you through?
I would 100% say to anyone who served with me on that last tour, when I was having panic attacks and I was wired up the way I was, it became more and more evident I couldn't hide it anymore. And it wasn't just a case of, on a night out, somebody might say, why is he crying? What's upset him? You know, sort of thing. It would be, I sat upright in the bed, and all it was somebody had kicked their leg out. You know, when you're training hard, you get those weird involuntary muscle movements and spasms in the middle of the night. So somebody had just struck the plasterboard wall that I was sleeping end on. So my head is here, the plasterboard wall is here. They were sleeping long ways on this wall, further up, and he'd kind of just, his ankle bone must have just caught the wall or whatever. But in my head, I heard the bang and I felt the crunch and the heat and the air displacement off a big bang of it, like fast air from 2008 memory. And so I sat up in the bed in 2014 and thought that we were being overrun. So I slid over, put my body armour on, unclipped my helmet, put that on my head, picked up the general purpose machine gun with the 2,000 rounds and all the rest of it, and started running out the door to go and make my final stand. And everyone else in the room has sat up, and the two lads grabbed me as I was on my way out the door and were like, "What are you doing, crazy man?" And I'm like, "Didn't you hear it?" Absolutely face transported with passion. "Did you not hear it? It's happening, you know, we're being overrun." Mate, there's nothing going on. They made me go and stand outside in the courtyard, and it was just silent. Just this amazing, purest night sky with no light pollution, the calmest of nights, looking out into the desert. There's nothing going on. And I thought then, I was worried for myself. I was like, what's going on? You know.
And that was in Afghanistan.
That was in Afghanistan, yeah.
I guess there is a point of saying, well, you could have been under attack.
Well, it was at a difficult state. Yeah, we were in a tiny little location in that particular instance, and sharing, you know, there's like 40 of us and like 500 of the indigenous personnel from that country, and we're overseeing training and stuff for them. And it's a kind of a very fluid relationship. And the only thing that separates us from them is a piece of corrugated iron, and it's like 2 football fields large, our entire compound, and you're stuck in there for 7 months. It's like doing prison almost. It's not like you can just go for a roam outside the wire. I mean, there were times when you could go out and you can go out for a run or play football you might play against them, play football or volleyball with them, but you're in a war zone and you need to respect that. So
coming out of that war zone and then back in England, how did you know you were still suffering I mean, were other things setting? Because I can understand noises setting you off there in
Yeah,
Afghanistan.
yeah, definitely.
Is there any symptoms that you get when you hear?
Almost certainly, and things were so much worse, and they still can be quite bad, but it depends on sleep and how kind I've been to myself and all that kind of stuff now. And I've also had the benefit of a couple of years worth of EMDR treatment and CBT and NLP, and I've kind of thrown everything at myself to.
That's interesting.
To try and help.
How long did it take you to sort of recuperate?
Peel myself off the ceiling.
Yeah, yeah.
So go back to 2014. There was an incident, and the officer in charge there was killed. And this is a person that I'm interacting with daily. Now I'm in a logistical role this time, and to go back to what you said about using my experiences, I might be sat in front of somebody who maybe wasn't a frontline soldier, who was in the chain, because of course it takes 11 people behind the scenes to put one person kicking the door in at the end. And I would say I had the benefit in my career of playing a couple of those different roles, and so I'm able to use those experiences to help those kind of people. But losing the boss and a couple of other lads got shot up quite badly, and even though I wasn't on the job with them, it still really affected me. And the psych nurse was then deployed, and it was the first time I'd ever seen one in theatre.
Psych nurse.
Yeah.
Yeah, as in the psyche. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, as in the psychiatric nurse.
Yeah.
So she came out and was brilliant. And sat us all down, and we all had to have a mini interview. And I'm thinking at this time, I'm in a back foot role. I'm the chef. I'm sorting out feeding strength. I've got 7 Afghans working underneath me every single day, and I'm sorting out all their kind of when they go home and all the kind of it's logistical role mainly.
Yeah.
I stay in this forward position. I don't get to go on the jobs and do that stuff because this is my role. I get to jump in and do the training serials and take them and teach them going through the killing house and stuff. And I'd still do some soldiering bits, but only when these guys are away and there's no one else to do it. I then step up and jump in and backfill those roles. And that's very much how that unit worked. And again, that brings about complications, because if you just spent all day showing people how to go round corners, firing across the front of each other into targets, and it's you're doing it at full pace, and you've got all the gear on and all the rest of it, that is replicating all of the juices.
Yeah, that's going to set you off. That's going to
Totally.
Yeah. So, what did the psych nurse ask you to determine that you were suffering?
I've racked my brains for years since trying to think about how, because I would have been very closed and protective. For whatever reason, I gave her the truth, and I still can't to this day tell you the exact question or the exact answer, but I know I pretty much was bubbling on, crying or falling apart. And she said, I'll tell you what, I'll let you finish the tour if you promise to come see me back in the UK. So I promised her I would, and I'd stand on that. So I did. I went back, got back to the UK from Norton, handed in my weapons, all the rest of it, got okayed to go on leave, went via her office, went and spoke to her. She asked me all of 3 more questions.
Do you remember the questions?
I just remember it was something like, and how did that make you feel being part of it? Because for a long time I was really aversive to it. And how did that make you feel? Because I'd be like, oh.
And how did that make you feel?
It just cut me in half. It just cut me in half, and I just started crying. I was completely broken, and rightly so. She was like, right, go and take all your leave. I'll be in touch. And the process just went from there. That then led into subsequently quite a long period of leave. I've spoken about that in other podcasts and things. Then led me into the recovery centre for just under 4 years, Naval Recovery Service Centre.
4 years of recovery.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
pretty broken, mate. I was.
What did you do in 4 years? Sorry, Nick, because
To start with, I used to go to the gym with my water bottle, my wallet, my ID card, and all I'd have to do is turn up at 8:30 every morning in the gym. You wouldn't believe how hard that is to do when you can't wake up properly on time. You oversleep, you undersleep, you overeat, you undereat. You're all over the place. You'll be up really intensively the night before till 4 or 5 in the morning, completely on one about something, and then just not wake up till like 11. Totally, it's such a. To describe it, it's like your brain is like a garage full of starlings. It's just going everywhere.
Can you actually recall it? Can you remember the 4 years? Or?
Yeah, I mean, almost certainly. The first year was just intensively physically rehabbing as well, because I had loads of mechanical injuries I'd just been completely ignoring. And the knee was always a was always there. And the kicker was, in the last year, I had it operated on again. It's just, I knew it was coming and it was trashed. So they said, look, you're going to be discharged from military service. Take the operation now, get it done whilst you're in, which I did.
So I guess you're coping with, firstly, being discharged and knowing that the military was your career for so many years.
Yeah.
Then, obviously, the physical injuries, and now not being in tune with your mind.
Yeah,
or
well,
letting your mind run you, actually, is probably
that's
more
the
like
thing,
it.
and that's what can happen. So it's about finding and using and implementing those techniques to be able to keep yourself on the straight and narrow and be able to operate the business to try and survive, etc.
What techniques sort of stand out for you that they taught you that maybe you would think, okay, if anyone was watching this, these would be good
I remember doing so many sessions on, we did one where there was a balloon in the room and they had a pin. Just watching the pin and the guy with the balloon, and he walked around behind everybody, so you now anticipating a bang and a bit of air displacement.
Little children are scared. I mean, there's two things that you were born with fears: loud noises is one of them, and the fear of falling is the other.
So one of the things that they then asked you was, how's your pain, your physical pain, from 0 to whatever? And there's guys in the room with bad backs and all kinds of stuff going on, and everyone recorded as much higher. And that was to teach you that when you're in emotional pain, your physical pain is perceived to be much higher as well. So it might be you're really moaning about your knee or your leg or whatever it is. Actually, there might be more going on there, and you need to not stop, but like do something to be really kind to yourself. So if I'm not firing correctly, the first thing I do is communicate. Okay, stop, talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell Louise, I'm not firing on all cylinders. My brain's completely gone here. I am going to struggle. What do we do? Okay, cancel that meeting. Book in a massage. Go for a swim, do whatever you can. Now COVID, I find myself up to my neck in the river, in a quiet spot surrounded by cows.
Probably the best place to be honest. Well, I'm sure it was.
Finding a way to chill and scale back. I might just spend the night down here next to the campfire in my little safe space. Yeah. Whatever it is, or I might pick up something and start carving, another carving project. I'll implement the outdoor skill set, the natural time-tested processes. It's well-known cold water works. There's hundreds of people out there on the internet right now.
You've got Wim Hof, who's like...
Bin Hof.
Bin Hof, yes.
Everyone's doing that stuff.
Yeah, they're all doing the Wim Hof stuff.
Okay, so yeah, well, I've got the river. Yeah. So it doesn't get any better than that.
It doesn't get any better.
So it's all these kind of things, and it's just working out what works for you and tuning that in and making it work for you. A lot of people say, well, I live in a city and there's no possible way that I could do any of that kind of stuff. And I implore people to think of ways, think outside the box to introduce a bit of nature. Yeah, go to Richmond Park.
I mean, I live in a beautiful part of London.
In Richmond Park.
Amazing. I was had a walk yesterday, and there's baby deer there now. Oh,
so you have these encounters, don't you?
And it just makes you think, actually, everything that's going on outside in the big wide world.
Yeah.
The only thing that actually really matters is this moment you're in right now, the present moment.
Completely.
And if you can focus on that, I think, and being grateful, actually.
Yep. And thinking about all the positives, rather than focusing on. We make more of whatever we've got. Okay, whatever we're thinking about, we choose to focus on, we'll make more of. If you heard that classic story about the young native Indian brave who speaks to his grandfather and he says, there's a war going on inside my mind between two wolves.
No, please tell. No, but it sounds an interesting one.
And grandfather, I don't know which one will win. And the grandfather says, it's simple, it's whichever one you feed. Whichever one you choose to feed.
Of course.
Is going to survive and is going to thrive.
It's going to thrive.
And it's as simple as that.
And it's the same with the mind. You feed that negative mind, it's going to take over and go.
A lot of the stuff I do down here is based around storytelling, because our brain, it's been proven to light up in a different way. So you combine things like storytelling to plant a seed. I'm not telling a story about someone, I'm telling a story about something that happened that applies to that person. But they'll then go away and then say, that story you told me, was that about me? And I'll say, no, it was about...
such and such, but actually it could be you.
And they'll go, well, I thought about that, and then it's made me realise this. And I'll say, oh, right, okay, so what are you going to do about that now?
Planting a seed.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. Yeah.
Nick, what does the future hold? We're just coming out of COVID. Well, hopefully. Lockdown is starting to release, fingers crossed. where do you sit? Where is this going? Because I can see a few things around me.
Things are happening. Okay, I've been keeping the. Well, should we do the big reveal?
We should do the big. I think we need to do the big reveal.
Get one of the cameras to just pan onto it and back.
Yeah. Ben will take that over afterwards.
I've been keeping this a bit quiet from social media because I've needed to focus 100% of myself on it of late. And I'm not going to lie, it's that classic pain pleasure thing. It's secretly killing me, but I'm also secretly really enjoying it, and it will be all the more worth it, and it will have all the more impact on people's lives once it's done. So for a long time I've had my knackered little cabin in the woods that was built from £240 worth of recycled materials.
£240, wow.
Of just stuff nobody wanted, and that's including the paint. Okay, and it just sat there in the woods. Now obviously when we became the kindergarten and we changed all the planning classification, so this woodland, this whole space is now for the provision of therapeutic activities for veterans and emergency service personnel, for the provision of a woodland kindergarten and subsequent outdoor activities, and then it's the cabin and associated outbuildings, which is the toilet. So the cabin, sadly, is not going to do another winter. After 8 winters, I got to the point, and I've made a little video which I haven't released yet, of me pushing my finger through the holes in the sides, and you can see the damp on the roof. And a few things I did, I was a bit naive. I made a flat roof, it needs a pitch. When it snowed, the roof nearly came in because of the weight. So things like that. So I approached the Veterans Foundation and said, I really, really want to be able to provide more from my little site. Okay, we're small but mighty. When I've got people down here who've got terrible backs and things like that, I want to be able to have somewhere that they can have or bring their families and an experience that is better than just me giving them a camp bed or a hammock or something. So I wanted to use that cabin, which previously just about I slept in from time to time, and it's got a little sink, and I wanted to make it better, bigger, better, just better in general. So we got a grant from those guys, and I am working the angles with loads and loads of local suppliers. I can't tell you, there's a list of local suppliers from within this area who we are working with to help us, everyone from building merchants to roofing companies to tool hire to all sorts, who have helped to come reduce the price or help us out or do something. And I'm going to put a plaque up in there to say thank you to all those companies and businesses to show.
And if you want us to name any in the show notes as well, we'll put all of that in the show notes as well.
That'd be incredible, thank you. So that's happening, and we're about just over a quarter of the way through the build, and it's exciting. So
have you got a launch date, or have you got a sort of?
We're playing it by COVID, but I would like to see the shell up and most of it in by September.
And you're going to be offering this to key work
So the key workers thing is happening locally in our area. There was a local fund available for a CIC, which we are, so we applied and we got it. So we can now provide things for our post office workers who are run off their feet, the local shop owners, all the kind of key workers.
Everyone that's been affected.
Emergency services, obviously, NHS, and the people you'd kind of think of to start with. But then there's also a whole other bunch of key workers that make the whole machine work. And they're crying out for some time out. So if I can provide the same formula that the veterans get for the rest of the world, because we're all only human, that'd be amazing. And that's going to happen.
Nick, I've enjoyed this so much, and especially being here and in the nature, it's absolutely wonderful.
Thank you very much for coming out to see us.
We are going to put, where can people find out about you more, your website, and all your social media links in the show notes.
Thank you.
But I've come to my last question, which is? If you were to write a message in a bottle for future generations to find, what would that message be?
So many things jump to my mind. I would have to say something that made me giggle recently, and I think that maybe some of our younger generations are missing slightly. The secret is, there is no secret. You have to do the work.
I love it. Nick, thank you so much for being a guest on my show in this beautiful environment.
Thank you for being here. This is really kind of you.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember, there's a new interview out every Monday, so hit subscribe and like, and you'll get it straight into your inbox.